All right, guys, as you can see, it's about 20 degrees outside. I walk into the fish room and I walked into a major problem. Now, I didn't know how this video was going to, which direction it was going to go, so I didn't really film right off the rip, and I just had to dive into the problem at hand. So I went ahead and figured everything out, so let's go ahead and talk about it. All right, so I mentioned how, it's like 20 degrees outside. It's the dead of winter, so it's a bad time for catastrophic failure. As you can see, there is pumps here. There's the Okemo out. So basically what happened, my dad woke up. It was probably 10 o'clock at night. This tank was so gray and nasty, couldn't even see through it. The sturgeon was up top. He was gasping for air. All the koi were up top, gasping for air. So he came in. There was no power on this entire wall. So there was no lights, no nothing. No air getting to none of these tanks. The only sort of saving grace, once the power stopped here, the water stopped flowing to this tank here. That's why it got so gray and nasty. No filtration, no air, no water movement, and a lot of fish in there. As you can probably imagine, it was pretty bad. At least for these tanks here, the power coming from the pond was still on, and these 3 tanks were being fed water. So, a lot of it didn't make sense. He walked over, first thing he did, he grabbed a pump. Good man. Put it in this tank, started pumping water in here, because the first thing you need to do when you see a disaster, you first, get them into better water. You can't see through it, start draining it, put fresh water in, get air on it. So he went and grabbed an air pump. Now he plugged both of these in to the OPES down here. And he didn't call me in the middle of the night and say get over here. He did have Skylar and Jerry here helping, but my dad did end up saving all of these fish in this tank with my sturgeon that I am very grateful for. This is one of my favorite fish. These things take forever to grow out, and this tank is just a beautiful fish. Everyone who comes here just sees it and is just like, ooh and ah. Beautiful looking fish. So I got to thank my dad for being quick on it, doing one last check before bed, and noticing that the pumps were off. So if he would have just went to bed because he's tired, watching mom and whatnot, if he'd have just went to bed, would have woke up in the morning and everything in this tank would have 100% been dead. There'd have been no survivors whatsoever, because a tank this packed full, that gray, and how nasty it was, it would not have been a good sign. All right, so diving in, what exactly happened? Well, I came over the next day after work. My dad called me in the morning, told me that we had an issue. Didn't really know what was going on, but there was also a flood here, which cleaned up. This thing fell out, pumped all over the ground, got everything wet, so made my job just a little bit harder, because when you're dealing with electricity, water is not your friend. For one, the breaker, the electrical panel over there, kept tripping. Every time you turn power on to this entire circuit, it instantly tripped the breaker. So I knew something was wrong with the electrical. Somewhere, somehow. These are all arc fault protected. So, just the smallest nick in a wire, and it's going to pop that breaker. It's what Strongsville calls for code now. And, it used to be all GFCI protected, which is great. All of our wall outlets are GFCI protected. But the arc faults are just a little bit more safer. For us fish guys, it's a little bit more of a pain in the butt. Because if your fish chews a little hole in the water, you can stick your finger in the water, you get a little shock, but hey, it's probably this pump right here, and it still runs until you can get, fixed for it and whatnot. But man, this Frontosa tank is looking much better after that big old clean out I did. But back to the story. So I started ripping everything out. Now this is the next day, so day 2, I start ripping everything apart here. And I just take it one step at a time. I know there's an outlet underneath this tank. I know there's an outlet behind that couch there. Now I think this is the only thing on this whole wall, because that's where all the fish tanks are plugged in. I unplugged everything, nothing. It still tripped. I'm like, man, well, I can't really figure this out. I probably spent about an hour. First unplugged, one thing at a time, went over there and popped it, because you can literally trace it down. If you unplug one thing and the breaker stays on, then it's that cord right there, and you can keep going in a sequence and figure out which pump, which heater, whatever it may be that's plugged in could be bad. Now this is something all of you fish keepers should keep in mind, and these are words of wisdom right now, because I have gone through this multiple times. So the chance that you guys may go through it in the future is very possible. So, I'm scratching my head. I cannot figure this out. It's now day 2. I went ahead and ran an extension cord from a completely separate circuit from in the basement in the house. Ran it out here with a 100-foot extension cord, so I can go ahead and plug in a 6-pack and get these pumps on here, so my dad didn't have to change out the battery banks every like 12 hours. Now these things are a great addition around here. My dad has 2 of them, and they have come in so handy so many times. I cannot thank that company enough for go ahead and giving them to you. They're great for fish trips. They're great for camping. They're great for a lot of things. Hey, even saving fish. So at the end of day 2, I went ahead, plugged everything into an extension cord, and we're basically limping everything by on an extension cord. I go back home, back to the drawing board. All right, day 3, I went ahead and, talked it over with my dad. We were like, it has to be the breaker. So I told my dad if he bought the breaker, I'll get back there, I'll take it apart, and I will replace it. So, once I get off of work, day 3, I come here, I take apart the breaker box, I shut off the power, test it with my little electrical tester, make sure I'm not going to get zapped. I remember where all the wires go. I then add in the new breaker. I'm thinking, you know what, this should be fine. Oh, might I add, I'm taking the old breaker out, and I notice that the common wire has a crack in it. So it was probably making a false connection, arcing, and potentially tripping the breaker. So I went ahead and re-stripped it. I put it back together, still the same thing. So then I went ahead and replaced the breaker. I did a brand new breaker and put it back in, thinking, yeah, there's going to be no problem whatsoever. I put the new one in, I go and I trip it, bam, same thing. So I'm sitting there scratching my head again. I'm like, there's only so many possibilities that this thing could be. I'm running out of logical explanations for this. So I'm like, all right, it's an arc fault. What happens if the wiring on the backside of these plugs happen to be arcing? We're not seeing it or smelling a arc or electrical burn, and it just happens to be arcing. So I know that the plug behind that couch there is daisy chained to the plug under here. So my thought was, if I go ahead and disconnect the main power from this plug here that's behind this couch, I could then turn on that breaker, and those 2 wires should be live. The rest of the outlets will be dead. It is a way for me to step-by-step process of elimination and see what might be wrong. So I went ahead, I got back there, took the plug apart, took the main wires off, went ahead and re-tripped the breaker. Lo and behold, it still trips. So I'm like, I'm really running out of, logical explanations. I'm going to keep on stating this because there's only so many logical things that can go wrong with an electrical problem. So I'm like, all right. I go and I talk it over with my dad because, he did go to electrician school. So I asked his advice on it, and we're all sitting around here and pondering. Even Bob came over. And we're just sitting here trying different ideas. So he goes down in the basement, grabs me a normal breaker, which you're not supposed to run because it's just direct power. But this is a way for me to test different things as I'm going along. So I went ahead and took the white wire. I went ahead and put it to the bar in there where all the pigtails go. So then I just hook up, the hot wire straight to the breaker, and I turn it on. Lo and behold, everything comes on. It works just fine. So I'm like, okay, this really does not make sense. But I start playing around with it, and I realize it's nothing in here. And then my dad goes, wait a minute, hold on. There is a plug on the outside of this pool room that is actually powering the back deck and the pond pumps. So I go out there, I'm like, bingo, that's probably it. Something fell, nicked a cord, and it's sitting outside in the snow and getting wet out there because it is all exposed. Well, I went ahead and did that. I went ahead and disconnected those wires down there, and I went back inside. I tripped it, and lo and behold, same thing happens when I put the arc fault breaker back in. So I'm like, all right, we put the old breaker back in. I'm able to test it once again. And we noticed that there is a plug way up high that's shooting out to the barn where there's some more stuff plugged in the barn powering pond stuff. I'm like, oh, we didn't think to check that. So I move it around, and it instantly trips. I have someone inside tripping the breaker for me. I disconnect the extension cord that's way up top on the ceiling up there, and it still trips. But what I noticed something when I did this last little test here. I'm going to actually go out here and show you. I have it apart right now, but there goes the plug. I'm actually going to crawl up here. This is an old style plug. Now, they really don't make these no more. If you look at it, they're like 3 prongs. They're sideways. And my dad went to go get a new plug and found out they don't make it no more. But something internally in that plug was arcing and sparking. Every time I plugged this in, there was a blue flash of arc up there. So I'm like, bingo, that does it. I went ahead and disconnected that plug up there. So them wires are live right now. And I was able to put the arc fault back in, and everything has been running flawlessly. So I'm like, all right, bingo. Dad, go up there, grab a new plug, and I'll plug it right back in. Well, he went up there. They told him that they don't make these no more. So I told him just to, do as that they suggested. He's going to put, well, he bought me a new end and a standard plug now. So I can go ahead and put a new plug on the end and install the new plug, which will happen tomorrow. And we shall be back good as new. So this was a 3-4 day dilemma that I had to just keep taking it step by step, because eventually you're going to figure it out. If I would have called an electrician out here, which I did call a couple buddies and say, hey, pick their brain and whatnot, I would have probably paid, couple $1,000s to an electrician to trace all of these problems down, and then come to find out that it was just a lousy plug that was bad and somewhere that we didn't know was on this breaker. So, but lo and behold, we are good. Everything is back together, and it was a near catastrophic failure that could have happened here at Ohio Fish Rescue, but my dad went ahead and saved us from that, and now the fish tanks are getting back to clear and pristine. We're actually going to keep on putting more water through this tank and not, relying on the water from this 500. So we're going to have more of a flow going through this tank and that tank, rendering them, being clear for longer. So when we feed them, they'll clear up a lot quicker, and everything will be good to go. So I hope you guys enjoyed the little story time with your boy Josh over here. I'm sure there will be plenty more to come, and I hope some of you guys might have even, learned a lesson or two. And some of you guys who might be electricians are probably laughing at me right now. But you know what? This is an old home. We didn't build half this stuff. So, when we're doing repairs, we're learning as we're going to. But I'm glad it all worked out. So I hope you guys liked today's video. I will catch you in the next one. Stay fishy, my friends.